Hi, I'm Nick Harcourt. This is Guitar Center Sessions. Please welcome our guest, Alanis Morissette.
I'm broke, but I'm happy. I'm poor, but I'm kind. I'm short, but I'm healthy, yeah. I'm high, but I'm grounded. I'm sane, but I'm overwhelmed. I'm lost, but I'm hopeful, yeah. And what it all comes down to is that everything's gonna be fine, fine, fine. 'Cause I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one is giving a high five. Well, I feel drunk, but I'm sober. I'm young and I'm underpaid. I'm tired, but I'm working, yeah. I care, but I'm restless. I'm here, but I'm really gone. I'm wrong and I'm sorry, yeah. And what it all comes down to is that everything's gonna be quite hard. 'Cause I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one is flicking a cigarette. What it all comes down to that I haven't got it all figured out just yet. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 'Cause I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one is giving a peace sign. I'm free, but I'm focused. I'm green, but I'm wise. I'm hard, but I'm friendly, yeah. I'm sad, but I'm laughing. I'm brave, but I'm chicken. I'm sick, but I'm pretty, yeah. And what it all boils down to is that no one's really got it figured out just yet. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 'Cause I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one is playing the piano. What it all comes down to, my dear friends, yeah, yeah.
Hi, I'm Nick Harcourt. We're here with Alanis Morissette. First of all, thank you so much for coming and playing for us.
Yeah, thanks for having.
It's great to see you.
Good to see you.
You and I have spoken in the past, but it's been a while, and it's been a while in between records, obviously, and I want to talk about that. But before we talk about the new material, if you look back on your career and think of how many records you've sold, 60 million, and I don't know how many Grammys, lots and lots of Grammys, nominations, sold out concerts. I mean, you've been a very successful artist. Well, careers shift and change and people evolve. But what would you say is the highlight of your career so far?
Wow. I think my most highlighted moments are when records are finished. And I'm just finishing this record and about to share it with the world. So there's this giddiness that I feel. Because it's an updating, you know, it's almost like a getting to know myself through the writing and then getting to know my audience and becoming more intimate through the sharing of it. So when 4 years or so have gone by, or a certain amount of time's gone by, I don't feel as intimate with them because I haven't sort of brought people up to speed with what's going on, and I haven't seen people on the road, so I miss them.
Can you describe the power and the language of music for you?
It's such a beautiful blend of physicality, spirituality, emotionality, musicality. It just blends all the top favorite checkmark things of my life into one little tiny fell swoop. So for me, it's also it's cathartic. It's not always healing. You know, I can sing certain songs that are filled with rage and vitriol, but doesn't necessarily heal that relationship that I might be singing about, but it moves the energy. So that's exciting. And then it also allows me to engage into the conversation on a larger scale, like the one we're having right now. I get to be in the public eye and having a conversation about whatever topic might be exciting to talk about at that moment.
When did you first discover music? Can you remember your earliest musical experience?
Yeah, I started writing songs when I was 9 in my bedroom, and it was all fictitious at that point. There weren't a lot of relationships to comment on at that point, with any objectivity anyway. And then I sent a song that I had written to friends of ours who were musicians, and they wound up creating a whole track, and I went to sing it. And it was only at that moment that I knew I could sing, because before then my brothers had told me repeatedly that I had a horrible voice. So I realized I could sing when I was 10, and I started writing more and more songs. I had a record company that I formed when I was 10 because nobody wanted to sign me.
But you're 9 years old. I mean, what was the inspiration for that?
It's that imperative thing. I couldn't not write. For me, it was dancing, acting, singing, comedy, physicality. It was just this energy that just moves through me, and I have to corral it. It's a big responsibility, I think, for all of us to corral the unique voice that we all have, whether it's literal voice or otherwise.
What was your first instrument?
Piano.
Can you tell us how you came to play piano?
I came to piano via torture. I was doing piano lessons at 6 a.m. before school every day.
Did you have any resentments around that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I hated the piano for a long time, and then I needed it. So necessity bred form on that one.
Needed it to write?
To write, I needed something to write my music with. And piano was easier for me than guitar, actually.
Was there anybody who you looked up to at the time? Any piano-playing singers that you drew any inspiration from?
I think singing-wise, I looked to Aretha Franklin and Whitney Houston and even Madonna at the time when I was younger. Figured if I could hit some of the notes that some of the greats were singing, that I was semi-legitimate as a singer. Piano playing, you know, I listened to what my father was listening to, which was Dylan and early Rod Stewart and, you know, Leonard Cohen. So.
Now, when you were 14, you got your first record deal, right?
Yes.
In Canada, obviously. What was going on at the time in Canada, and being a 14-year-old, what were you trying to do, apart from perform and be heard?
Yeah, I was writing probably 20% autobiographically at that point. I still didn't have that objectivity enough to...
What were you writing about at 14?
Relationships.
Okay, so you're already on that track.
Yeah, the first song I wrote formally was called Fate Stay With Me, and my twin brother laughs at me saying, "You're hilarious, you're writing songs about fate, and I'm playing soccer." So I was definitely wanting to write about headier, loftier things even as a little girl.
I recommend walking around naked in your living room. Yeah. Swallow down. What a jacket they feel. It feels so good. Swimming in your stomach. Wait until the say. Shoot at anyone. I certainly do. I recommend sticking your foot in your mouth at any time. Oh, feel free. Throw her down. The caution blocks you from the wind.
Now, for your first album, you co-wrote most of the songs, right? Mm-hmm. Who did you have to help you in that writing process?
As a young person?
Yeah.
I wrote with Leslie Howe, and then later with Serge Cote, so the three of us wrote together. So I've always loved collaboration, and I enjoy writing songs alone, and I did so when I was 9 and 10. I wrote all my songs alone, but the collaboration process to me is really sacred, and I continue to do it even though I, quote-unquote, don't need to.
Right. What is it about collaboration what is it about a collaboration that can bring something to you that perhaps wasn't there before?
Well, I think I was born to connect and born to create the third entity, you know, me and them equals three. So I just enjoy the magic that comes from my stretching outside of my jurisdiction to meet this collaborator, whomever it may be. And they certainly have done the same. So there's always this kind of scariness when we're writing.
If you look at those couple of albums from the early 90s, Alanis and Now Is the Time, mm-hmm. How much creative freedom were you given at that time?
I was given a certain amount of freedom. There was a little bit of a ceiling in terms of what was expected of me as a young artist. I think the precedent had been set that I was a pop artist that wasn't writing autobiographically. So when I attempted to write a little bit more of an authentic storytelling kind of approach, it was met with admonishings. I wasn't encouraged to keep writing like that. So I had to leave eventually.
Why was that though? I mean, what was it, do you think, about the label that they were trying to do to you? I mean, they were trying to, I don't know, subvert your voice in some way?
Yeah, I mean, that's not, that's not an uncommon thing with record labels in the past.
Right.
So I think what happens is that the precedent had been set. I think my first record went platinum, so it was known as kind of pop, and any evolution was actually scary to them in terms of bottom line widgetry.
So it's like, whatever you do, don't evolve.
Don't evolve, because we want to just keep doing what you've done. And for me, when I hear "don't evolve," my head wants to explode.
So the artist in you, the person who's trying to express what's going on with you, clearly had a problem with this.
I had a problem with a lot of things, especially anything that implied that I couldn't move forward or grow or evolve, definitely. And I was also encouraged to keep rhyming. If I wrote words that didn't rhyme, if I wrote something that was a little risky, according to them, they would just say don't. So I would say goodbye. I had to keep going.
So were you trying to step out of the traditional songwriting method?
The structure or the craft as such? No, I think I actually have access to the best of both worlds, because I know how to write a song. I know the structure of a song, and the arrangement is really easily come by for me. But then I also like to get messy. So I like knowing the core and the skeleton of something is really foundational and firm, but then I like the messy, crazy, sweaty, unpredictable, wild chaos. So for me, it's often a blend of both.
So you came to Los Angeles, I guess, to really explore the chaos.
Yeah.
What drew you to LA?
I had come here when I was 10 years old, and I just fell in love with it, and I knew that I had to come back at some point, and I was dying to come back. I was like a horse being reined. I wanted to move to Los Angeles right away.
So when you got here, I mean, what was the plan? Was there a plan?
The plan was for me to keep writing until I wrote songs that I loved, until I wrote a record that had me doing backflips.
And were you playing out at the time, or were you just holding up writing?
I was holding up writing with every person that I could possibly be matched up with through my publishing company at the time. So, and I had been doing the same thing in Canada as well. So I'd been writing a lot of songs that weren't necessarily indicative of what got me going and got me really excited. And then I met Glenn Ballard in Los Angeles here, and we were set up on, sort of a typical collaborative blind date, and we wrote a song within the first hour of having met. And I just thought, wow, here's someone who is supportive of me, gets the whole artistic journey, but also has enough experience that he can corral all of this.
What was it about him that you connected with, though? Because you can talk about, obviously, his experience and his ability, but the connection has to go a little bit deeper than that.
Yes. It was very soulful, very intelligent, very considerate, and created this context in which I had total freedom to be myself. And I was never met with any wing clipping by Glenn.
Over the period of time that you worked together, did you work fast? Did you take breaks? How did it come about that you ended up with the songs that became Jagged Little Pill?
They all were very quickly written. So a song like Perfect took 20 minutes to write. So on average, between 20 minutes and 45 minutes. And to be honest, that's how I've continued to write songs. So if a song takes longer than 45 minutes to write, it was not meant to be written.
limited and shut down. So why would you talk to me at all? Such words were dishonorable and in vain. Their promises solid as a fog. Where was your watchman then? I'll be your keeper for life as your guardian. I'll be your warrior of care, your first warden. I'll be your angel uncle. I'll be your command, the greatest honor of all as your guardian. You in the chaos, feigning sane. You who was pushed beyond what's humane. Them as the ghost you tumbleweed. Where was your watchman then? I'll be your keeper for life as your guardian. I'll be your warrior of care, your first warden. I'll be your angel uncle. I'll be your command, the greatest honor of all as your guardian. Now, no more smiling mid-crestfall. No more managing unmanageables. No more holding still in the hailstorm. Now into your watch, woman. I'll be your keeper for life as your guardian. I'll be your warrior of care, your first warden. I'll be your angel uncle. I'll be your command, the greatest honor of all as your
Shifting from somebody who's workshopping songs and recording songs and mixing them to suddenly being in the public eye has got to be a huge step for any artist. But as you said, you were very young. What about emotional preparation for something like that?
I still have PTSD from that time. What are you going to do? I'm still working through it. It was such an intense, semi-traumatic experience for me because on one hand I'm very sensitive and very shy, on the other hand I feel like I have this warrior-esque approach to life of wanting to, take a bite out of any apple. So the combination of that made for what wound up happening, and this great humility, I suppose, that permeated all of it, but I was very traumatized.
When You Ought to Know hit K-Rock here in Los Angeles, and other stations obviously picked it up very, very quickly. That's a game changer. Mm-hmm. One song can be a game changer.
How exciting.
What do you think it was about that song that connected?
I didn't know at the time. I was just writing a song.
Sure.
But later, in retrospect, I suppose the directness of that emotion of anger in a woman, from what I came to learn, was not something that was typical, perhaps. Although I'd heard it with Sinead O'Connor, and I'd heard it with Tori Amos, and I'd heard it with other female artists, so it wasn't a surprise for me. But I think perhaps, you know, the mainstream pop culture maybe was so shocked to hear me be so vulnerable and authentic and transparent. And I think a lot of people said to me at the time that they just thought it was really brave because it's so, you know, there's such shame around that kind of devastation, you know. But to me, it's just part of being human.
Now, this is 1995.
Yep.
And I was working at a little radio station in upstate New York, and I will let you know that we also added it the same week that K-Rock did, but we were in Woodstock, so
you didn't get the glory.
Nobody took too much notice about it. But I remember when I heard that song for the first time as a radio programmer, I couldn't believe it.
What was it, though?
I couldn't believe that there was a woman who was being so direct and so clear about her reaction to somebody.
That's awesome.
And I'm wondering if that's what it was that struck a chord with the radio audience. I mean, I'm guessing it was. I mean, it was kind of shocking at the time. And there weren't a lot of female artists on the radio as well. Do you think that you opened some doors there?
You know, my ego likes to think I had a big part in the sea change of there being more openness to women. And I think, you know, just my having sold that amount of records, I think changed some people's minds. And the patriarchy was already changing. You know, it was really super patriarchal, the context I grew up in, whether it was the music industry or anything. So the planet was changing, and it was this lovely convergent moment that on some level I can take credit for, but on another level I was just part of a wave that was already moving.
Well, clearly there were a lot of women who were making music at that time. I mean, there have been for a long time, but there definitely seemed to be a moment in the early to mid-90s when there were a lot of women who were being very direct in the way they were singing about things, rocking out, which was something that hadn't really happened, at least for solo artists anyway. And not long after that, Lilith Fair came along. And there was this whole movement of female artists who started to get recognition, and it was a game changer. When you look back at that time now, and with hindsight and perhaps perspective that comes with time, were you aware that you were part of a movement?
Yes, I felt like I was on the top of a crest of a wave, and happily sitting there on my little surfboard. But it was a wave, with or without me.
What do you think are the ingredients of a hit song? I mean, clearly this has been something that you've spent a lot of time working on, still do, whether it's on your own or with a collaborator. I mean, can you put your finger on something? Do you know when you're writing something
that there's a little magic fairy dust on it? All I know is whether I'm having a visceral response to something, period. So if I don't care while I'm writing it, if it's boring to me, or if I don't want to jump out of my chair, then I don't care, and I usually don't even chase that song down. But it's a certain chord harmonic consideration and a lyrical authenticity, and if the lyrics write themselves, it means that it's coming from this place that is beyond something that I can describe. It's a very spiritual, sort of channeled process without sounding too pretentious. It's a very channeled process for me, and I'm humbled by it.
An old man turned 98. He won the lottery and died the next day. It's a black fly in your Chardonnay. It's a death row pardon, 2 minutes too late. And isn't it ironic? Don't you think it's like rain on your wedding day? It's a free ride when you've already paid. It's the good advice that you just didn't take. to fly. He packed his suitcase and kissed his kids goodbye. He lived his whole damn life to take that flight. And as the plane crashed down, he thought, well, isn't this nice? And isn't it ironic? Don't you think? It's like rain on your wedding day. It's a free ride when you already paid. It's the goodbyes that you just didn't take. And who would have thought figures? Well, life is a funny way. There's hanging up on you when you think everything's okay. Everything's going right. Anyhow, well, life is a funny way of helping you out when you think everything's gone wrong and everything blows up in your face. Traffic jam when you're already late. No smoking sign on your cigarette break. It's like 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife. It's meeting the man of my dreams, meeting his beautiful husband. And isn't it ironic? Don't you think a little too ironic? Yeah, I really do think it's like rain on your wedding day. It's a free ride when you already paid. It's the goodbyes that you just didn't take. And who would have thought it figures? Yeah.
We talked about, obviously, the fact that success so quickly and in such a big way is something that can perhaps be a little difficult to handle. What was the most difficult part about it for you?
Well, I had this naive thought that fame would afford more connection. You know, I was this kind of hungry, lonely girl, and I was excited that, you know, my being thrown into the public eye would have me be connected with everybody. But I found the opposite to be true. I felt there was even more separation, and I had to protect myself, and people were sneaking into my hotel rooms, and I couldn't go anywhere. People were pulling my hair and jumping on my car, and it was so disconcerting for me. And I wanted to connect with people, but there was all this projection on.
But not like that.
Well, that's not really actually a connection. It was actually, I was, you know, being separated from people. So it was devastating for me.
Right.
And I also became the watched one. You know, I'm such an observer. I love watching people, and I would sit on park benches and people watched my favorite thing. And then all of a sudden I'm on that very same bench and people, the eyeballs are on me, and that's not my most comfortable place.
So you like a little bit of anonymity.
I do. I like both.
And to be put in that place where everybody's suddenly, you know, what's in her garbage or who's she seeing,
Yes.
or any of this stuff,
Yep.
that's got to be mind-blowing.
Yeah, it was very disconcerting. I was freaked out.
Did you have to take a step back before you came back with the next album and try and take that in? And at the same time, did you feel any pressure to deliver on the follow-up album? I mean, you had a big single off the follow-up album, Thank You. But obviously, it was never going to match the success of that moment. Was there any
Right.
disappointment around that?
I wasn't trying to do Jagged Little Pill Part 2, and certainly I'd had a lot of people saying,
You got to do the same
ride
thing.
this, you
Right.
know? And, you know, a little bit of a rebellious part of me for sure, but at the same time, that imperative to evolve was continuing to drive my choices. And, you know, I couldn't go to a grocery store. I couldn't leave my house without someone saying, when's your next record? You know, so there was a lot of pressure, not enjoyable context to write a record in at all.
How'd you handle that?
I hid. I remember I wrote a song called That I Would Be Good in my closet. You know, there were just a lot of people around and I just hid. I went to India and I just ran away from everything to the degree that I could and closed a lot of doors and begged for silence.
When you came back, how had your perspective shifted?
When I came back from India?
Yeah.
I was at this fork in the road where I could have continued to chase some brand, you know, using today's term, that had been set from Jagged Little Pill, or I could just see what showed up in the studio and write about my experience then. And so I wrote songs like Thank You and That I Would Be Good and some sort of looser structure to the songs, and that was really fun for me. And a lot of people around me were just terrified of me. So, you know, not a lot of people were giving me...
Okay, why were people terrified of you?
I don't know, fame and status and those kinds of things can have people walk on eggshells.
Do you find that because you have status and fame that people treat you differently? Mm-hmm. They perhaps don't tell you things that you should hear?
Well, now, I mean, cut 2 years later, now I have plenty of feedback from the people that I love. You know, but it took me 15 years to establish that kind of mutual trust and respect. And, you know, I had to grow up a little bit. But for a long time, I was in a bit of a vacuum.
Now, your material's always been a looking glass into you. Mm-hmm. When you look back at those songs from 15, 17 years ago now, mm-hmm. and you play them now, I mean, you've played some for us here today. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about them now?
I thank the sweet baby Jesus that I can stand by their content. You know, it's really actually fortunate for me that there is some element of timelessness to them for me personally, so that I don't feel like a crazy person singing a song that doesn't resonate with me anymore. So I like them.
Do you rearrange them so that they feel a little different for you?
Sometimes I'll change some of the harmonics just to keep it interesting, or some of them I haven't sung in so long that singing them again is like visiting an old friend.
Do you think there's a song from any period of your recording history that captures the essence of Alanis Morissette?
Any song that touches on the dualism, you know, so the song called Everything, the song called That I Would Be Good, Hand in My Pocket, anything that covers the bothness of life, I think, you know, in a way that that one song could possibly do, would be the one that would encapsulate my thing.
So you're not going to give me one?
You want one?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I shall not give you one.
Oh, come on.
I don't have one right now. Everything, I would say. I mean, maybe not musically, but lyrically.
I can be and love the grandest kind. I can withhold like it's going out of style. I can be the moodiest baby, and you've never met anyone who's as negative as I am sometimes. I am the wisest woman you've ever met. I am the kindest soul whom you've connected. I have the bravest heart that you've ever seen, and you've never met anyone who's as positive as I am sometimes. You see everything, you see every part, you see all my light, and you love my dark. Dig everything of which I'm ashamed. There's not anything to which you can't relate. You're still here. I blame everyone else, not my own partaking. My passive aggressiveness can be devastating. Terrified and mistrusting, and you never met anyone who's as close down as I am the dullest woman that you've ever known. I'm the most gorgeous woman that you've ever known. And you've never met anyone who's as everything as I am. Sometimes you see everything, you see every part, you see all my lights, and you love my dark. You dig everything of which I'm ashamed. It's not anything to which you can't relate. And I'm still here. Still here. I'm still here.
How's becoming a mother shifted things for you? You became a mom, what, a year and a half ago?
I was excited to see what kinds of songs I would write because I started writing pretty much almost immediately after my son was born. And we did it in the house. We built a studio in our house, and it was a blur. And I barely remember writing these songs. So the luxury and the exciting thing about not having objectivity while I'm writing is that I get to step back, listen to the songs when they're done, and get a sense of what this era of my life is about. And I actually thought there would be more songs about the maternal chapter that I'm in.
There was going to be an album of
mommy songs.
Yeah.
That's right. So no, they're not. It's not that. There's definitely some referencing to it, but it's a nice. For me, it's a nice, encapsulation of just being a woman.
But how's it changed you? Forget the songs.
Yeah.
How's it changed you?
I'm finally able to do what I feel I was born to do. I'd had all these sort of dysfunctional versions of me being maternal inappropriately, professional relationships where I was trying to exercise this maternal part of me.
What, taking care of a guy or something?
Too caretaking-ish, just too much caretaking. Inappropriate.
Right.
Exhausting. So it's now allowing me to channel all that, idle energy into an appropriate human being. It's awesome.
How do you see yourself in today's music business? I mean, we're going to talk about some new music, but things have changed so dramatically. Nobody sells 20 million records anymore.
Yeah, wow.
How do you see your position as an established artist, obviously, in this landscape?
I feel excited by this new era. I think it's an era where artists have a lot more dignity and self-respect because of the power that they're being given. The contracts in general are more partnership-oriented. They're more conscionable. So there's more self-respect. And then in general, I feel with the more current artists right now, I feel like a sister, or I feel like an older sister. I also feel like the little sister with some people. So I feel very... there's a lot of comradeship that I feel.
Is there anything at stake as you go back out with a new record?
My lower back. No, there's nothing at stake for me. Just making sure that I don't trip is a big deal.
I mean, is there anything you feel you still need to achieve? Service and expression. And I think as an artist, we're all social activists by default. We're not even aware that we are. We're putting ourselves out there for people to define themselves in accordance to us. That is a huge deal. It's a huge responsibility and a lot of energy. So I don't take that lightly. I'm not overly precious about it either, by the way, but I think it's a big service for those of us who have the staying power to stay out in the hot heat. But it's a responsibility you choose.
Yeah. And I choose it, and I feel like it's a mandatory one. It's one that I don't, I feel like I kind of volunteered. Somewhere along the way, I volunteered to do this, and I got a stamp that said, "You're in, go."
How do you describe the new material?
Warm, a lot of movement and energy. We just shot the album cover, and I came up with a few key words for us to use as our true north, and really it was movement and freedom, and being expressed, and a lot of bravery in there. There's some content in there that I think will kickstart some very heated conversations, which I'm excited to embark upon.
Can you tell me what freedom means to you?
Freedom means the opportunity for me to be exactly what I was born to be, and that's a tall order, because there's so many things that can stop us from being who we really are.
Well, it's interesting because you talked about as being a mother, that you finally are doing what you were born to be.
Right.
What else?
Yeah. Artist, mom, a friend, teacher. This is the part of me that is this geeky PhD academia woman, and now I have less shame about that. The fact that I read 100 books, and I used to try and hide my books. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Just be that geek.
How about getting off all these antibiotics? How about stopping eating when I am full of? How about them transparent dangling carrots? How about that ever elusive kudo? Thank you, India. Thank you, terror. Thank you, disillusionment. Thank you, frailty. Thank you, consequence. Thank you, silence. How about me not blaming you for everything? How about me enjoying the moment for once? How about how good it feels to finally forgive you? How about grieving it all one at a time? Thank you, India. Thank you, terror. Thank you, disillusionment. Thank you, frailty. Thank you, consequence. Thank you, silence. The moment I let go there was the moment I got more than I could handle. The moment I jumped off of it was the moment I touched down. How about no longer being masochistic? How about remembering your divinity? How about unabashedly bawling your eyes out? How about not equating death with stopping? Thank you, India. Thank you, Providence. Thank you, disillusionment. Thank you, nothingness. Thank you, clarity. Thank you, silence. Yeah, yeah. Oh,
talked about shame a couple of times. How has that been taken in, and how has it evolved as a woman?
Yeah.
How have you evolved as a woman to overcome that so that you're not feeling that today?
For me to attempt to come across as shame-free is not true. I just feel like every record captures this snapshot of what's been healed, what's the topic of conversation that's exciting and pivotal right now. We'll chronicle that, we'll put it on tape, we'll go sing it around the planet, and then we'll come back and live more life and comment on that. And I think that's our offering as artists, whether it's visual or sonic or sensual in some way, it's our calling to do that.
What inspires you today? People, I guess, family. What about music? Is there any music, or are there any musicians out there today, any younger musicians perhaps that you find inspiring?
Well, the reason why I met and crushed out on my husband is because he's an incredible artist, Solai. So his record has been keeping me very, very riled up and inspired. So a lot of more rap music that he's introducing me to that whole genre, all the way back to Bahamadia. And in general, I've been sort of narcissistically wound up in my own record for the last year, so I look forward to hearing more artists, period. I know that when I go on the road, my bandmates and everybody I'm showered with new music, so I feel like kind of giddy to get into that.
Obviously, each album that you've made has its own definition because of the group of songs that you've written and recorded for it. Can you do that for the new one?
Yes, it's very womanly and very empowered and brave and musical and a little bit more rock than I've been doing over the last few years, and always harmonically interesting enough for me to get the chills.
Well, talking of the chills, I asked you earlier about the power of music, describing or defining the power of music. Do you feel differently today than if I'd have asked you that question 19 years ago?
I've always known music has been so powerful of communication, because when I would sing songs in Beirut and all over the planet where there were literally barely any English-speaking people in the audience, there was such a connection. It was really emotional. So for me, music is this ultimate language. It's where God comes into the room, Is there anything about music that still inspires you that perhaps you weren't aware of when you first started? Have you discovered more within the music throughout your career? What I love about it is the ongoing aspect of it, that there's a conversation that continues to unfold, and that there are billions of notes that I can pick from, and that I feel I haven't even begun to nail the ultimate song. I think I share this with a lot of artists that I know, that I never feel like there's any finish line. It's just ongoing.
And is that what still drives you?
I think so. I'm often blown away when I hear a record, and sometimes I'll listen to a record 10 years later and just think, wow, I feel as though I wrote that song for myself, but my later self. So I listen to it as though I am not me a lot, and that's nice.
So that becomes then a time capsule that you can look back on. But then, that's interesting. I want to explore that, because you're saying you wrote a song maybe 10 years ago for you to understand now?
Yes. That happens all the time. I'll listen to a song and think, wow, this was prophetic. It's as though I knew where I was going.
Can you give me an example of that?
There's a song on the DVD Feast on Scraps called Simple Together. And Sorry to Myself, that while I was writing it, I wasn't thinking. There was some element of intellectualism when I'm writing, but mostly it's just get it on tape. And then I listened to it a few years later and just thought, wow, this is exactly what I'm going through right now. So when people sweetly come up to me and say, you really were the soundtrack through my divorce, or when I left college and I was freaked out, I can actually understand what they're saying because of my relationship, certainly with my own songs, but with other artists too. I know how much music can sort of capture a time for a human being. So I feel humbled that I can offer that to people.
It's been great talking to you.
You too.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks.